Hey, Mama, have you ever thought, is this neurodiversity or is it trauma? Or as a professional, ever said to you, this could be a trauma response when you have that knowing, that deep knowing that either yourself or your kiddo is showing signs of ADHD, autism, or any of the many other neurodiversities out there. So today, I want to cover something that's a little bit controversial. How do you know if it's trauma or neurodiversity? And why my answer probably not be the one professionals expect. Because here's the truth. I actually believe trauma is a form of neurodiversity, not innate neurodiversity, but acquired neurodiversity. And there is science behind that. It's not just me that sees it in this way. Also, I've lived it, I've worked with it, and my youngest daughter is the walking, talking testimonial of why this conversation is so desperately needed. Hey, I'm Naomi. I am emotional mastery expert for neurodiverse mums and your double-digit daughters, whether one or both of you are neurodiverse. I support mums go from chaos, firefighting, and overwhelm to calm, controlled, and connected, both with themselves and with their children. If you've ever felt like you're walking on eggshells, burnt out, or questioned if you're doing it all wrong, please know you are not alone. You just need the right tools and understanding and space that gets you and what's going on in your life. So just wanted to break down quickly what neurodiversity is. So neurodiversity is an umbrella term with different types and different categories. So I just want to break down the types here first. So innate neurodiversity is where you are born with it. It's lifelong. It's things like autism, ADHD, PDA profile, dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's. This is the place. The innate neurodiversity tends to be what people think about and talk about when they think about neurodiversity. However, that's not the case. We also have acquired neurodiversity. This is where you're not born with it. It's not something that is in your genetics. It's not something that has been there from the start of your development within the womb. But it's brain changes later on. And this can be due to things like trauma, chronic stress, PTSD or complex PTSD, brain injuries, illness, or neurological conditions. These are permanent or long-lasting changes to the brain and the nervous system. You then have the combination. So this is where there is a combination of the innate, which is the things like ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, dyslexia, and they're combined with other things that are experiences that change the way that your neurological pathways respond to the world. Things like trauma, chronic stress, brain injuries, and illness. So that's just a brief overview. And if you want to know any like this in more detail, I do have another video that I will link to this that explains it in a little bit more detail with the categories added to it as well. So back to my question. How do you know if it's neurodiversity or trauma? Trauma isn't just a feeling, it's neurological. It physically and functionally changes the brain. So when you think about it, trauma shrinks the hippocampus, which is the place of memory and learning. It also overactivates the amygdala. This is your threat response. This is where you go into the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And it's how you respond to any situation around you. Trauma reduces the prefrontal cortex regulation. This is where you have the impulse control, planning, emotional regulation. It's a really important part of who we are and how we respond to the world around us. The trauma rewires the neural pathways around safety, threat, and attachment. Trauma changes the autonomic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And then this becomes a default when it's changed, because this is a lived experience that's happened, and it's changed the neurological pathways. So there isn't. Some people see trauma responses as bad moods or bad moods, and that's not the case. These are measurable neurological differences, which is literally what neurodiversity means. A brain that diverges from the typical patterns. So yeah, trauma fits the criteria for neurodivergency. It's just not innate, it's acquired. Now this is where it gets a little bit messy, because science loves a good argument. We all know that there is different methods and there's different theories behind every aspect of psychology and the human brain, because it's such a complex piece of the human anatomy. So the neurodiversity movement originally focused only on innate neurodiversities. Some researchers say mental health conditions are not a neurodiversity. Others argue that traumatic brain injury, chronic mental illness should absolutely be considered as a neurodiversity, because the brain function is permanently altered. Trauma symptoms overlap with ADHD, autism, PDA, sensory processing differences, and executive functioning skills. Professionals often struggle to separate them, which leads to misdiagnosis or missed diagnoses. So yeah, it's a debate. Not because the science disagrees, but because the language is political. And I think that really makes such a difference in how we perceive what neurodiversity as an umbrella term actually means. So this is kind of why this has come to a head for me. So over my career as a social worker, I saw so many children refuse assessments for autism or ADHD because they've been through some kind of trauma. They were told their behaviours were trauma responses and not neurodivergencies. But here's the problem. Sometimes, and a lot of the time, it's both. Sometimes trauma lands on top of an already neurodiverse nervous system. That's where the system completely fails kids. And I want to kind of explain this in a little bit more of a personal way from me. So my youngest daughter, Lily, is a perfect example. From the age of 2, she displays signs of autism, ADHD, OCD, like a whole rainbow of neurodivergence. And I was told quite often by health visitors and doctors that because of my training and my qualifications and my career as a social worker, that I was seeing things that weren't there for her. When actually, in fact, I was recognising that my daughter was showing these signs and these traits. So at the age of 4, she finally became under the child development team, which is like the children's psychologists here in the UK. And they all agreed that there were signs there. But because there were so many different neurodivergent traits for her, they didn't want to overdiagnose. So they didn't diagnose her with anything. They literally said, we will keep assessing every 6 months to see how this evolves for her. So come age 5, unfortunately, she went through some significant traumas, which suddenly the psychologist then said, oh, this isn't neurodiversity, it's a trauma response. But she showed these signs before the trauma and way after the trauma has been processed, worked through and put to bed, basically. Yes, the trauma would still have changed her nervous system, but it wasn't what was the initial reason for the differences in how she perceived the world. So this left her in diagnosis limbo. She's not neurodiverse enough to be assessed or to be diagnosed. She's not traumatized enough to be under the mental health services, so she's lost between the teams who couldn't agree which came first, the neurodiversity that is innate or the neurodiversity that was acquired. So this meant that she had no support in school, no understanding about her sensory needs, no emotional regulation support, and the neglect of her actual innate neurodivergencies, which caused more trauma. This is exactly why this conversation isn't optional for me, it's necessity. It needs to be said, and I think it needs to be heard and explored further with research and science. You see, when people ask me, how do you know if it's neurodiversity or trauma? My answer is always, why are we acting like it can't be both? The child can be innate neurodiverse and traumatized and display acquired neurodiversity traits from that trauma. These experiences layer on top of each other. They don't each cancel each other out. They add an extra level to what the child is dealing with, or adult, like to the person is dealing with, and how that impacts the way that they see themselves in a world that isn't designed for the neurodiverse brain. So this is why I believe trauma should sit under the neurodiverse umbrella. It changes neurological pathways. It alters cognition, regulation, sensory processing, and behaviour long term. It overlaps with innate neurodiversities. It's massive. Like the overlap is huge. Kids and adults fall through the cracks when we refuse to acknowledge that neurodiversity and trauma are actually one of the same. Recognising trauma as acquired neurodiversity opens access to better support, more compassion, less shame, more appropriate strategies, accurate understanding of behaviour, and fewer kids and adults being labelled as naughty or dramatic or attention seeking. Calling trauma and neurodiversity doesn't minimise innate neurodiversity. It fills the gap of a system that refuses to acknowledge that trauma actually changes the way that our neurological pathways interact with us as a being. So our nervous system, our brain functioning, as I said previously. So I just wanted to say, if you're a mum watching this and thinking, my child has been dismissed because of trauma, or they said it's too complicated to diagnose, or they keep saying it could be this or it could be this, I'm not giving you a definitive answer. I'm really one for supporting mums to know that even though professionals might not see that your child has a neurodiversity, we know, we have that deep knowing, we can see the differences within our children, and we are the ones that know them the best. So we're the best ones to be able to recognise, actually, this is a neurodiverse trait. And I'm not saying self-diagnose your children as having autism or ADHD or PDA or dyslexia or whatever it is. It's about having an understanding that neurodiversity as a term, as an umbrella term, is a way of understanding what is going on within your nervous system and within the really important aspects of your brain, like the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, the fight, flight, and freeze responses. These all change. And when they do, they fall under the neurodiversity bracket. So just know there's nothing wrong with your child or with you. You're just dealing with a system that doesn't understand neurodiversity in its fullest form. Your children deserve to be seen, not split into categories. And I'll keep shouting about this until every neurodiverse person, innate, acquired, or both, get the support that they actually need. Now, if this resonates with you, or you're sitting here nodding along going, oh my God, this makes so much sense, then I have a really awesome community, which is free. for mums who are embracing neurodiversity in any form. I would love for you to come and join us and join the conversations that's going on in there. We have regular trainings and information, Q&As to be able to help you to understand what neurodiversity is and how that's affecting you, your child, and everybody around you's nervous system. So it'd be great to see you on the inside. And I look forward to meeting you. Thank you for watching.